Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. You ready to get into it?
Always.
Awesome. So today we're diving into something called the path of discipleship.
Okay.
And it's this framework for spiritual development that we found in some really fascinating writings.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not really about beliefs or dogma.
Right.
It's more like a map of how people evolve and like wake up to a deeper understanding of themselves and the world around them.
Okay, I like that. A map.
Yeah. And what's really cool about this material is it doesn't just like lay out a set of rules, like do this and don't do that.
Right.
It actually gets into like the psychological and societal structures that shape our understanding of reality.
Okay, that's interesting.
It gets into some thought-provoking stuff about like systems of control and how they impact our spiritual growth.
Oh, I see. So it's not just like a personal journey.
Right, exactly.
It's connecting to like the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting.
So right off the bat, the source outlines two distinct paths.
Okay.
The path of discipleship and the initiatory path.
Okay.
We're going to be focused on the discipleship path today.
Right.
But that initiatory path is, we're going to save that for another deep dive.
Yeah, that sounds like a whole other
It's a whole other can of worms.
can of worms for sure.
Okay, so within the discipleship path, the source identifies these distinct levels of evolution,
Okay.
kind of like stages in this journey of awakening,
A progression.
a progression.
Yeah.
And each stage has its own unique characteristics and challenges.
Makes sense.
So the first level is the neophyte.
The neophyte.
Yeah, and so think of someone who's just kind of living a pretty routine life, going through the motions, work a family, paying the bills,
Keeping the lights on.
keeping the lights on. Yeah, their focus is on meeting those basic needs.
Right.
Maybe daydreaming about that 2-week vacation.
Oh, yeah.
But haven't really considered the bigger, like, why behind their existence.
I see they're not really questioning the meaning of it all yet. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just kind of in that survival mode.
Yeah, I can relate to that for sure.
I think we've all been there at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I've definitely had those moments where I'm just like on autopilot, just going through the daily grind, scrolling through my phone on the commute,
Right.
not really present in my own life.
Yeah, just kind of zoning out.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect example of the neophyte stage.
Oh,
It's not necessarily a bad thing,
right.
but it's like a starting point.
It's where we begin.
Yeah. And from this foundation, the next level emerges, which is the aspirant.
The aspirant. Okay.
And this is where things start to shift a little bit.
Uh-huh.
The aspirant starts to sense that something's not quite right with the way society operates.
Like a subtle awakening.
Yeah, like a subtle awakening. They're starting to see those cracks in the system.
They're becoming more aware.
Yeah, and how political and economic structures might not actually be serving the majority.
I see. So they're starting to look outward.
They're looking outward. Yeah.
Not inward yet.
Not inward yet, but there's this growing sense of unease.
Like something needs to change.
Yeah, exactly.
This is interesting.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really intriguing.
Okay, I'm listening.
The source says the aspirant often starts to perceive a pyramid structure controlling society.
A pyramid. Interesting.
Yeah. So those in power at the top dictating the rules for everyone below.
Okay, I'm curious about this pyramid concept.
Yeah, me too. It sounds a little bit like those conspiracy theories.
Right, right.
But the source seems to be suggesting something a little deeper here.
Okay, so it's not about literal conspiracies.
Right.
It's more about the power dynamics.
Yeah, it's more like a representation of how power dynamics actually operate,
Okay,
both
Fair.
in society and within ourselves.
gotcha. So it's like a microcosm and macrocosm thing.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So the aspirant sensing this structure might start dabbling in spiritual practices,
Oh, okay.
looking for answers outside of that conventional framework.
So they're trying to break free?
Yeah, they're looking for a way out, a way to break free from the confines of the system.
I can see how that would happen.
And this exploration can be really valuable.
Right.
But there's also a potential pitfall here,
Oh, what's that?
which is getting caught up in like the superficial aspects of spirituality without actually going deeper.
Right. So it's like a difference between like wearing a malabid bracelet and actually meditating.
Yeah, exactly. Or like following a guru on Instagram for feel-good quotes.
Right.
But never actually examining your own biases or doing the inner work.
Okay, so it's about more than just the appearance of spirituality.
Totally. And the source calls this pseudo-spirituality.
Pseudo-spirituality. I like that.
And it's about seeking entertainment or validation rather than genuine transformation.
It's a good distinction.
Yeah. And this brings us to the next stage, which is the disciple.
The disciple. Okay, so this is where things get real.
This is where things get
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
The disciple stage marks a significant shift towards self-awareness
Okay.
and like a yearning for real, lasting change.
Mm-hmm. A desire to actually embody those principles.
Yeah, and the Source uses this really powerful metaphor here.
Oh, I love a good metaphor. What is it?
It says, the river hits its banks to discover its way to the sea.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So the aspirant's growing discomfort with the status quo,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of forces them to seek a new direction,
I
a
see.
deeper understanding of themselves and the world.
So it's like they're hitting a wall and realizing the old ways aren't working anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. They're hitting that wall and they're like, okay, I need to find a new path.
Makes sense.
And this is where self-knowledge becomes paramount.
Okay.
The Source really emphasizes the importance of overcoming the ego.
Right. Shedding those limiting beliefs and identities.
Exactly. Shedding those layers that are holding us back.
Yeah, we all have those.
I love the example the Source uses about a professional's reaction to the idea of not knowing themselves.
Oh, what's that?
You can almost picture them saying like, but I'm a doctor. I've got it all figured out.
Right. They're so attached to their role.
Exactly. And it's a perfect illustration of how deeply entrenched we can become in our roles and identities.
Absolutely.
The disciple starts to question those assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
realizing that true knowledge begins with understanding yourself.
It all starts within.
It all starts within.
Mm.
Yeah, and this is where the concept of the soul comes in.
The soul. Okay.
And the Source makes it clear this isn't necessarily a religious idea.
Right. It's not about dogma.
No, it's
Right.
not about dogma or belief systems.
Mm-hmm.
The Source defines the soul as your deepest self,
Okay.
the essence of who you are, beyond your job, your social roles, even your personality.
So like that core essence.
It's that core essence, yeah, that inner compass that guides us toward our true purpose.
I like that.
And this understanding leads us to the next step, which is the primary disciple.
The primary disciple. Okay.
And they are actively seeking self-knowledge
Hmm.
and a connection to what the Source calls a higher reality.
A higher reality. What does that even mean?
Yeah, so it's about connecting to something larger than ourselves, like a sense of interconnectedness and purpose that kind of transcends those limitations of our ego-driven perceptions.
So like tapping into something beyond our individual selves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
The primary disciple engages in this really crucial practice, which is self-observation.
Self-observation.
Yeah, so they start paying attention to their thoughts, feelings, words, and actions.
Wow. That sounds hard.
It is hard. Our minds are constantly buzzing with distractions.
So true.
And the Source warns about the dangers of those distractions.
Yeah. Especially what it calls pseudo-spirituality.
Right. It's like getting caught up in trendy spiritual fads or following those charismatic figures without doing the real work.
Right. They're seeking entertainment, not growth.
Which is kind of ironic since we're essentially providing entertainment here with this deep dive.
Ooh, good point.
Right.
It's all about intention.
It is. It's all about intention.
Oh.
And it highlights that importance of being discerning, of
Yeah.
questioning everything,
Yeah.
even the information we consume in the name of spirituality.
So the primary disciple needs to be careful about who they learn from
Exactly.
and what they choose to believe.
They need to develop their own inner compass,
Mm.
their own sense of discernment.
They're moving from blind faith to a more conscious and critical engagement.
Exactly. And this, in a nutshell, is the journey from neophyte to primary disciple.
Okay.
It's a journey of awakening self-discovery and a growing awareness of those forces that shape our reality.
That's quite a progression.
It is. It's fascinating to see how each stage kind of builds upon the previous one,
Right.
leading to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world.
It is a journey.
It is,
And it's one that takes courage, commitment,
for sure.
and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that true growth often comes from confronting our limitations
Absolutely.
and challenging those systems that keep us stuck.
And that's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive.
Yes.
As we explore the challenges and potential pitfalls on this path.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
So we've journeyed from the neophyte, just going through the motions,
Yeah.
to the aspirant, sensing something's off,
Yeah.
all the way to the disciple yearning for change,
Mm.
and the primary disciple actively seeking self-knowledge.
Actively seeking. Yeah.
But this path isn't always smooth sailing, right?
Definitely not. No.
What about those bumps in the road, the detours we might encounter along the way?
Oh, absolutely. The path of discipleship is full of challenges.
Yeah.
And, the Source doesn't shy away from those at all.
Right.
It actually highlights some of the traps we might fall into,
Oh.
even when we think we're making progress.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
So one of the biggest obstacles, I think, is the influence of societal conditioning.
Oh, yeah.
We're all products of our environment to some extent.
Right.
And those ingrained beliefs and patterns, they can really hold us back.
It's like even when we think we're being spiritual or making conscious choices,
Yeah.
we might just be acting out these programmed behaviors
Yeah.
that we've picked up from our families or our culture or society.
It's so ingrained, it's hard to even see it sometimes.
Totally.
And the source points out how even positive aspirations,
Right.
like wanting to be a good person or help others,
Yeah.
can actually be rooted in ego if we're not careful.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's not enough to just do good deeds for the recognition or the praise.
So it's about looking deeper,
It's about going deeper.
examining our motivations.
Yes.
Like, are we truly acting from a place of compassion and selflessness,
Mm-hmm.
or are we seeking validation?
That's the question.
Ouch. That one hits close to home.
I know, right? It's a tough question to ask ourselves.
Yeah,
But it's a necessary one on this path.
definitely. And the source also challenges us to kind of look beyond our dualistic thinking.
Dualistic thinking, okay.
That constant tug of war between good versus bad, right versus wrong.
Right, like we're stuck in this binary system.
Yeah, it limits our understanding
Exactly. It's very limited.
of reality.
And the source uses a great analogy here.
Oh, I love analogies.
What is it? It compares duality to two sides of the same coin.
Okay.
They're interconnected.
Right.
They can't exist without each other.
So how do we break free from this dualistic trap?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because I think we can all relate to feeling stuck in those polarized ways of thinking
Absolutely.
sometimes.
So the source emphasizes developing a more holistic
Okay.
and integrated understanding of ourselves and the world.
So moving beyond judgment.
Moving beyond judgment, yeah.
Embracing a sense of unity and interconnectedness.
Exactly. And practices like mindfulness and meditation can be really helpful here.
So it's about creating space
Creating space, yes.
between our thoughts and our reactions,
Mm-hmm.
allowing us to choose how we respond.
Rather than just reacting automatically.
Right. We're not just reacting, we're actually responding.
We're choosing our response.
Yeah.
And that space allows for a sense of inner peace and equanimity,
Oh,
even when things get tough.
which they inevitably do.
Oh, they do.
Right.
And that brings us to another point the source makes.
Okay.
The idea that suffering can actually be a catalyst for growth.
I mean, I get that this is a common theme
It is a common theme.
in spiritual traditions, but it still feels kind of counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't
A
it?
little bit, yeah.
But think about it. When we're faced with difficulties, we're kind of forced to confront our limitations
Okay.
and to seek something beyond our usual coping mechanisms.
So those challenges, they kind of shake us out of our complacency
They do.
and push us to look deeper.
Exactly.
But it's not about glorifying suffering or seeking it outright.
No, definitely not. No,
Yeah.
it's about learning from those difficult experiences,
Okay.
using them as opportunities to evolve.
So approaching those challenges with courage and resilience.
Yes.
Seeing them as chances for transformation.
Absolutely. And it warns against constantly trying to avoid discomfort
Right.
or numb ourselves to pain.
If we're always running from those difficult feelings,
Mhm.
we're missing out on those lessons.
Exactly. We're missing out on the growth.
They might hold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that can lead to what's called spiritual bypassing,
Spiritual bypassing.
which is using superficial practices or beliefs
Okay.
to avoid dealing with the deeper issues that need our attention.
So we have to face our shadows,
We do.
those darker aspects of ourselves,
Yes.
and integrate them.
Integrate them rather than pretend they don't exist.
Right. It's about embracing that fullness of our human experience.
Yes.
The light and the shadow.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges,
Right?
but what about the rewards?
Oh, the reward.
What can we gain from walking this path?
So the source suggests the ultimate goal is liberation.
Liberation.
Liberation from the limitations of our ego-driven selves.
Okay.
Liberation from suffering caused by attachment and aversion. And liberation from the illusion of separation
Okay.
that prevents true connection and unity.
That sounds incredibly freeing. It does. But also pretty lofty. Is this something that we achieve at some distant point in the future?
Good question.
Hmm.
The source says it's not about reaching some far-off destination.
Okay.
It's about experiencing glimpses of liberation.
Right here, right now.
Right here, right now, in this moment.
Wow.
Moments of clarity, insight, and deep connection.
So it's about cultivating a sense of peace and purpose and meaning in our lives,
Yes.
regardless of our external circumstances.
Exactly. It's not about escaping from the world. It's about transforming our relationship to it.
So seeing the world with fresh eyes, with the heart filled with compassion and understanding,
Beautifully said.
that according to the source is the essence of true discipleship.
It is.
But hold on a second, because it feels like there's another layer to this whole discipleship thing.
Oh, okay.
We've been focusing on individual growth,
Mm-hmm.
but the source hints at something bigger, right?
Yes.
Something about societal transformation.
You're picking up on something very important. The source takes it a step further and suggests that this personal transformation is actually inextricably linked to societal evolution.
So it's not just about us as individuals.
No.
It's about the collective.
It's about the collective, exactly. And it goes back to that idea of the pyramid structure we discussed earlier.
Well, yeah, the shadowy cabal controlling the world.
Right.
Wait, are we about to go full conspiracy theory here?
Not quite.
Okay.
The source presents a more nuanced perspective.
Okay.
It suggests that this pyramid isn't just some external force imposed upon us,
Right.
but it's actually a reflection of our collective consciousness.
Oh, so you're all part of this pyramid.
We are.
Even if we're not at the top calling the shots.
Exactly. And true discipleship, according to the source,
Okay.
involves recognizing our own complicity in perpetuating these systems of control and inequality.
So we're not just working on ourselves.
Right.
We're also looking at how our thoughts and beliefs and actions
Yes.
contribute to the bigger picture.
Absolutely. It's about taking responsibility.
But how much can one person really change?
That's a question a lot of people ask.
It feels like a drop in the ocean sometimes.
I know what you mean, but that's where the concept of collective consciousness comes in.
Okay.
So as individuals awaken and transform themselves,
Yeah.
it creates a ripple effect.
Okay, like a chain reaction.
Exactly. And if enough people wake up,
Yeah.
it can actually shift the entire system.
Like a critical mass, a tipping point.
A tipping point, yes.
That leads to real lasting change.
And that's what those in power fear the most.
Because if people start questioning the status quo
Yes.
and reclaiming their power, the whole pyramid could crumble.
The whole system could collapse.
And this is where the role of the disciple becomes truly revolutionary.
It does.
It's not just about seeking personal enlightenment on a mountaintop.
Right.
It's about bringing that awareness and compassion back into the world.
It's about being the change.
So it's about challenging those systems of injustice and oppression.
Yes.
It's about embodying the change we want to see.
Precisely. But that raises a whole bunch of questions about
wondering.
how to navigate societal change
Yeah.
without getting caught in those same dualistic and ego traps
Right.
we're trying to transcend.
So how do we make a difference without becoming part of the problem?
That's a big question.
It is, and I'm guessing the source has some thoughts on that.
It does, and we'll dive into those in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
It gets into the nitty-gritty of how to put these principles into practice
Awesome.
and how to create real change in a world that often feels resistant to it.
All right, so we've established that discipleship, it's not just about personal growth. It's about actively contributing to a larger societal transformation.
Right. It's about putting those principles into action.
But how do we actually do that?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
It feels like a pretty daunting task.
It is a significant undertaking.
Yeah.
But the source material does offer some guidance on how disciples can navigate this challenging terrain.
Okay, I'm listening.
It emphasizes the importance of embodying the principles of discipleship in our daily lives.
So it's not just about lofty ideal.
All right.
It's about walking the walk.
Exactly. It's about integrating those principles of self-awareness, compassion, and unity into everything we do.
Okay.
Our interactions with others, our work, our creative pursuits.
So like living those principles.
Living them, yeah, not just talking about them.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we stay true to those principles when the world around us often seems to operate on very different values?
That's a real challenge.
How do we make a difference without getting swept up in the negativity or losing sight of our own goals?
Right. It's not easy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But the source material suggests that one of the most powerful tools we have is our own consciousness.
Okay.
It all starts with becoming aware of our thoughts, beliefs, and patterns of behavior.
You mean that practice of self-observation we discussed earlier?
That whole paying attention to our inner landscape thing.
Yeah. I have to admit, it's a lot harder than it sounds.
It is. It takes practice.
Yeah.
But it's the foundation for creating real change.
Okay.
By becoming more conscious of our inner world, we can start to see how it influences our outer world.
Okay. I see that.
Our thoughts, beliefs, and actions, they have a ripple effect that extends far beyond ourselves.
So that's how we start to be the change.
Exactly. We become the change we want to see.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this all ties together.
Good.
But it still feels overwhelming sometimes. Like, where do we even begin?
Right. Well, the source material suggests starting with small, achievable steps.
Okay.
It's about making conscious choices in our daily lives that align with our values.
Small choices.
Small choices, yeah.
What kind of small choices have you made recently that felt aligned for you?
Well, I've been trying to be more mindful of my consumption habits,
Oh.
like choosing locally sourced products or supporting businesses that align with my values.
Yeah.
It's not a huge thing,
Right.
but it feels like a step in the right direction.
Yeah, step in the right direction.
And that's what matters.
It's not about single-handedly solving all the world's problems overnight.
Exactly.
It's about focusing on what we can control,
Yes.
like our own thoughts, words, and actions.
Our own little sphere of influence.
Yeah, and trusting that those small acts of conscious living will have a ripple effect.
They do. They create those ripples.
Or maybe those ripples will inspire others to do the same.
That's the hope, right? That's how we create a wave of change.
Yeah.
And the source emphasizes the power of collective action and the importance of connecting with like-minded individuals.
Like finding our tribe.
Finding your tribe.
Yeah, and supporting each other.
Supporting each other on this journey.
Because we're not meant to do this alone.
We're not meant to do it alone, no.
Okay, that's reassuring. But what about those who might not be on board with this whole conscious living thing?
That's a good point.
Feels like everyone's so polarized these days.
Yeah, you can feel that way.
How do we deal with those who might even be hostile to the changes we're trying to create?
That's a great question, and it's a real challenge in today's world.
It is.
The source encourages us to approach these differences with compassion and understanding,
Okay.
even when it feels like the other side isn't listening or is actively trying to undermine our efforts.
So even when it's hard,
Even when it's hard.
even when it feels like they're not extending the same compassion to us.
Yes, even then.
Wow.
Remember, the goal here is to transcend duality, to move beyond us versus them.
Right.
It's not about condoning harmful behavior or remaining silent in the face of injustice.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we are all interconnected, even with those we disagree with.
So it's about holding on to our values
Yeah.
while acknowledging our shared humanity.
Exactly.
Or it's finding that balance between taking a stand and staying open to connection.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And the source acknowledges that there may be times when we need to take a firm stand against injustice, even if it means risking conflict.
That makes sense. It's about choosing our battles wisely and always striving to act from a place of integrity and compassion.
Precisely.
True change rarely comes from force or coercion.
It rarely does.
It comes from a genuine shift in consciousness.
Both individually and collectively.
Wow, this has been quite the deep dive.
It has.
We've gone from the personal journey of self-discovery to the collective transformation of society.
A lot of ground covered.
We've talked about the challenges, the rewards, and the ongoing work of putting these principles into practice.
It's a lifelong journey.
It is. And it's a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating the world we want to live in.
We do.
No matter how small our actions may seem.
Every little bit counts.
And it's a reminder that this is an ongoing journey.
Yes.
It's not a destination we arrive at,
Right.
but a path we continue to walk day after day, choice after choice.
One step at a time.
It's about showing up, doing the work, and trusting the process.
You got it.
Well, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us.
It's been a pleasure.
Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep shining your light.
Yes. Shine bright.
Even the smallest act of conscious living can make a difference.
It can.
We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.